Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something I think pretty interesting. It's a blog post called Notes on Gardening, part 435, with a really specific title. How tall can Cosmos Caudatus Ulam Raja grow?
Sounds familiar.
You'd think that'd be a simple question, right?
You'd think so, yeah.
But the author, Ang, well, he describes himself as this old software plumber, and I've got to say, his blog is all over the place. Tons of categories.
Oh, I've seen this blog. Fascinating guy.
Exactly. And this post, well, it's not just about the height of the Ulam Raja plant. It's almost like he's hinting at something more.
Like there's a mystery to unravel.
Yeah, about its whole life cycle and the potential for it to, well, keep growing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's get into it.
So Ang starts out talking about how his first batch of Cosmos Caudatus bloomed and then wilted. He kind of just assumed that was it, the end of the line, like they were annuals.
It's interesting how we often categorize plants so neatly. Annuals, completing their cycle in a year, or perennials, lasting for more than 2 years. But with Cosmos Caudatus, it's not so clear-cut. You see, it can actually be a short-lived perennial, so it has the potential to stick around longer, but maybe not for decades like some other perennials.
Like, so a plant can be both an annual and a perennial.
Exactly.
That's crazy. Okay, but back to Ang's plants. The tallest one he had only got to 70 centimeters. Pretty far off from the, 2 to 3 meters you'd normally expect, right?
That's right, it is. And Eng's notes give us some possible reasons. He talks about not always fertilizing or watering consistently, which of course would affect how they grow. But what I found really interesting was that the tallest one was completely on its own.
Like it had its own space, no other plants around?
Exactly. It didn't have to compete for resources.
Like a solo buffet. All the food to itself.
Precisely. And because of that, it probably grew a much stronger root system, taking in more nutrients, which let it grow taller. It just goes to show, even in your own garden, spacing matters.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Ang also pointed out that the tallest plant's stem was way thicker at the base than the others. And the others, they were actually hollow after they wilted.
Oh, wow. Now that's an interesting observation, and it connects directly to how healthy a plant is overall. A thicker stem means more strength and stability, which again points to a strong root system. That plant being all by itself, its roots could grow freely so it could support a tougher stem. And, that brings up another point that's worth exploring.
All right, I'm listening. What else grabbed your attention?
Well, think about this. A thicker stem would be a huge advantage out in the wild, where a plant has to deal with stuff like wind. And speaking of the wild, Aang ends his post wondering about planting Cosmos Caudatus out there and what happens if you prune it regularly.
Now that you mention it, yeah, he does talk about wanting to see how Ulam Raja would do in a totally natural environment. What kind of challenge do you think it would face out there?
Well, for one thing, out in the wild, it's got to compete. In a garden, Ulam Raja might be the main attraction, but in the wild, oh man, it's a whole different story. Everything's fighting for the same stuff, sunlight, water, you name it, just to survive.
Right, and don't forget about all the bugs and diseases and things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. Insects, fungi, bacteria, you name it, they're all trying to get a piece of it. And then there are even bigger herbivores that could, munch on or trample them. It's a constant battle out there.
So it sounds like it would be a pretty tough life for a plant in the wild.
It definitely can be, yeah.
What do you think are the things that would determine whether Ulam Raja would make it out there or not?
That's a great question. Well, it would depend on a lot of things, like the exact environment, how much rain it gets, what the soil's like, what kind of other plants are growing there, are there animals that eat it, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, it depends on the plant itself. Like, Ulam Raja actually has some chemicals in its leaves that can keep some insects away.
Oh, so it's got some built-in defenses.
It does, yeah. So it might actually stand a chance out there, maybe even be able to spread to new places.
Maybe. Okay, but shifting gears a little, what about Ang's other question, the one about pruning? How could that affect how Ulam Raja grows?
Pruning can be surprisingly effective in shaping how a plant grows. Like we said, it can make them bushier, by encouraging them to branch out sideways. But it can also kind of change the plant's priorities.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you prune off the flower buds, you're essentially telling the plant to hold off on making flowers and to focus on growing its leaves, stems, and roots instead. And this can lead to a bigger, stronger plant overall.
So it's like you're telling it, hey, forget the flowers for now, get big and strong first.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And since we're talking about a short-lived perennial, do you think that delaying flowering might help it live longer?
It's definitely possible, yeah. By putting all its energy into growing instead of reproducing, it might be able to squeeze out a few extra sounds.
Wow. It's almost like we can trick it into living longer. I've always been kind of scared of pruning. I'm always afraid I'm going to cut the wrong thing and mess up the plant.
Yeah, I get that.
But the way you're talking about it, it sounds more like a way to guide the plant, not just hack it back randomly.
Exactly. It's about understanding how the plant naturally grows and then working with that to get the results you want. It's like this intricate dance of hormones going on inside the plant. And with pruning, we can kind of influence that dance a little.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So bringing it back to Aang and his Ulam Raja, he could try different pruning techniques and see if he can make them live longer, maybe even break out of that short-lived perennial box.
Exactly. It'd be a fun experiment. And that's what I love about gardening. There's always something new to learn, always another question to ask. What about you? Is there anything about Cosmos Caudatus that's really standing out to you? What are you finding most interesting about this plant?
It's amazing how we started with just a simple question about, how tall this plant can grow. And we've ended up talking about like all these different parts of plant biology and how they survive in the wild, even how to like change their life cycle with pruning. It's been quite a journey.
It really shows how much we can learn from just one person's curiosity. I mean, Aang's questions about Ulam Raja have taken us on a fascinating exploration.
For sure. And it makes me think, like, what would I do if I was Aang? Imagine you're Aang, all this cool stuff about Cosmos Caudatus now, about it being both annual and perennial, about how it might adapt. What's your next move?
It's a great thought experiment. Would you be brave enough to take it out of the garden and plant it in the wild? To see how it competes with everything else out there?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh.
Or would you stay in the garden and try out all sorts of pruning techniques? See if you can make them live longer, get bushier, really play around with it.
So many possibilities. And that's what makes gardening so much fun. It's like always discovering something new.
Totally. And for our listeners who, want to follow Aang's journey or maybe start their own deep dive into the world of plants, we've got a link to his blog in the show notes. It's full of like really interesting observations and questions that make you think.
Definitely worth checking out.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has shown us that even the plants we think we know can be surprisingly complex. Maybe you'll look at your own gardens a little differently now.
Maybe even start asking your own questions and, doing some experiments yourself. Who knows what you might discover?
Exactly. Keep exploring and learning, and keep growing both your plants and your knowledge. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.